Good afternoon. My name is Robert Sakach, your host of the Business Owners Institute, where we meet with industry leaders and they give us our top tips for success in the business world today. This afternoon, I have the extraordinary pleasure of meeting with Nick Collins, who is the manager of talent acquisition and employment branding at bodybuilding.com. I had to look down because that is the longest title I think I've seen all day, and a self proclaimed unicorn hunter here in Boise, Idaho. Welcome to the channel, Nick.
Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here. I appreciate it.
All right, before we get started today, if you like content like this, if you want to hear Nick's great tips, or if you find this useful for your small business, if you'd give us a thumbs up, it really goes a long way for a small channel like mine. And if you'd subscribe as well, that'd be wonderful. So really appreciate you, and thanks for watching. All right, Nick. So you wanted to give us your top 3 tips for small business owners when looking at taking care of their hiring process, making sure they're going after the right candidates. How do they find them, and how do they keep them? What's going to be able to separate their business, from the other ones out there in the industry today? I know that here in Idaho, right, you got a great stat with, what the unemployment rate is, and so that kind of really dictates how we should be hiring, for our business.
Yeah, of course.
Why don't you kind of get started with that?
Yeah, so, Idaho right now is a 2.9% unemployment rate. So,
Yeah.
extremely small. There's so many more jobs than people available right now that you really have to set yourself apart as a hiring manager, as a small business owner. At the end of the day, you're trying to hire people to propel your business forward. And it's one of the most critical resources, if not the most critical. So, it's going to be super important to really set yourself apart in the process, because at the end of the day, you and I have the opportunity to really go wherever we want. There's more jobs. And so what attracts me to a business, everything from the process to the employment branding to the technology, as a hiring manager or a small business owner can kind of help you in that process.
All right. So your first tip today was, going off of having a kind of solid interview process, and I know that's kind of the name of the tip one, but
Yeah.
there is a lot more that kind of encompasses, I would say, what that interview kind of process looks like. With chatting with you earlier, so kind of dive into what that means to you.
Yeah, so I think having a strong interview process is like a super small box, where realistically it's like such a huge piece of the process. And it's important to keep in mind that at the end of the day, the stronger your interview process is, hopefully the less work you have to do as a hiring manager, and the more the time that saves you down the line. And hopefully it helps you find the best person, because if you're having to hire 2 or 3 people before you find the right person, right, that's a ton of money invested in training, attrition, the hiring process. So it really helps you to kind of dial in and think about the process off the bat. So, I would say that kind of broken down into a few major parts, but it will start with like the job posting. How is your posting different or more attractive to people? So if you stick to something like 7 years of experience and you have all these really rigid lines on what you need, you're probably going to have a much more rigid group of applicants that you may scare off somebody. If you're looking for a job, Rob, and you see it needs 7 years of experience and you only have 6, like, you might not apply. So it's important to keep these things in mind as you go, to kind of be a little bit more open with the job posting. Again, you don't want somebody who just graduated high school being your VP of sales, but like, you can tailor it towards the right audience.
And maybe so having that like fluidity with your application process could be more tailored so to the job application that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, like that VP of sales, maybe you want to have that rigidity kind of built into your application process, but maybe having a lower barrier of entry for your, first time job application kind of positions would be better.
Yeah,
So.
100%. You're going to hire very differently for a entry level worker as you will for a VP of sales. So everything from where you're posting the jobs and the applicants you're looking for, and the process will mirror that too. If you're looking for blue collar workers, then you really just need somebody who can drive a forklift, or whatever that looks like. It's going to be a really easy application. It's going to be a really easy interview process. Now, if you need somebody to lead a division of forklift drivers or a whole warehouse operation, you're going to need a little bit more dialed in. So it's important to kind of keep that in as you go through the process. And then once you get the right applicants, once you've targeted the right places, again, to your point, you're not going to throw a job posting on Craigslist if you're looking for a VP, a director, a manager. However, if you're looking for entry level talent, it's not the best place to start, but it's a place to start. And then utilizing job board services and things of that nature. And then from there, it's making sure you have the right people in the room for the interviews. If you're interviewing, again, we'll go back to like an entry level worker. You have 20 people in the interview, man, it's going to be so many opinions. It's going to be so much. Think of all the money you're spending on 20 people taking an hour to interview, right? Whereas if you have one or two people in there that can make the decision and go from there, that helps to ensure you have the right person at the right time. And you'll also want to kind of take a step back in that interview process and make sure you're hiring for culture, right? To make sure you have the right person, so you're not going through those two or three people we alluded to earlier. So that's the easiest tip is think about your most successful employee and try and emulate what they do, whether it's background. Let's say I hire you to come work for me. I'd be like, hey, I loved Rob's background in sales. I want to work in sales. I'm going to really hone in on these applicants. Or if it's just your personality, I'll be like, hey, what personality traits does Rob have that I want? Oh, he's a self-starter, he's a strong leader, a good communicator. Then you'll really hone in on that in the interview process and make sure that the questions you ask as an interviewer are built around that. So then in turn you can make sure they're a good culture fit and what propels your organization. It'll be different for everybody.
I think that's a really great point, because a lot of us, we try to think about, well, what's my ideal client? Oftentimes, and we try to tailor our marketing or our business services to our ideal client. And I think that oftentimes we might miss that idea when we're hiring is, hey, how do I hire for my ideal employee? And what do my ideal employees look like for my business already? 100%. And then just going and looking at hiring those people or more of those people.
Yeah, it's 100% correct. And you make your life as a business leader or as a business owner, so much easier when you have a team supporting you or a team as your peers that emulate what you want in your organization. It's the same principle, like you said, versus the clientele you're looking at. You put that same lens on it when you're looking for people that you want to join your team.
All right, Nick. So you kind of alluded to this earlier, right? But having kind of a strong employer brand, right? When trying to get new hires on board, what would you say was kind of like key factors of branding yourself, in this world kind of today?
Yeah, great. I know the employer branding part of my title makes it longer, but it's such a critical piece because at the end of the day, like we talked about earlier, you've got so many more people than jobs available right now. You have the choice. You kind of have a luxury as a job seeker right now to pick and choose. Whereas if unemployment was much higher, you have less of that luxury. So now it's more important than ever to make sure as an organization you have a strong employer brand. And it's kind of a hot button, a hot word right now, and a lot of people have different interpretations, but really at the end of the day, it's what somebody thinks being an employee at your company is like that marketing mentality you have with it. So I think the most important pieces to remember is this information out there? Can somebody find it? If I want to go work for Google, I can go on YouTube and see what it's like being an employee at Google. I can go on their LinkedIn, I can go to Glassdoor, I can go to hundreds of employees' social channels and have a general idea of what it's like to work there. So, Google being a huge example, even if you take it down to a smaller level and let's say you're operating a 20-person team, right? Like, what's it like there? Oftentimes, if you were going through the interview process and somebody's like, why should I come work for you? You'd say, hey, it's a family-friendly environment. We all work on these same things. We have fun. It's a work hard, play hard, like the general things that people would want to come work for you at. Why should somebody have to go through an interview process to find this out? How do you broadcast that out to them? So I think doing things like, honestly, I'll whip out my cell phone or have my team take out their cell phone when we do company events and either grab a quick interview from someone or capture a picture and then have some copy associated with that. And you can have it live on a LinkedIn. And if LinkedIn's kind of something a little newer to you, it can be on a Facebook. It can be, we have a careers YouTube page here at bodybuilding.com that is much higher level, but talks about what it's like working here so that if I'm a prospective employee, I can really dive in and kind of know what I'm getting into before I'm there, right? And it needs to be honest is the most important part. Don't fluff it if it's not a great place. You want people who know what they're getting into.
Yeah. And so I think a really great tip from that would be if you're a small business owner and maybe a family run business, I mean, how hard would it be to just put up kind of your little company get together with your family, at the end of the year, right, where you're doing your holiday party of just, hey, this is kind of, again, showing us our culture, our branding, that we are a family-run company and we're all getting together and enjoying the holidays with one another.
Yeah.
And
And,
so,
and even, piggybacking off of that a little bit, it's referrals will see this. If I'm see bodybuilding.com or my small family business post, hey, well, what fun at the holiday party, and I like that, and then I have Rob be like, hey man, it
yeah.
looks so fun over there, like walk me through it. I'm like, hey, well, you know what, I do have an opening, and it makes your interview process earlier because you have somebody who emulates your top employees, and so it all ties together in that grand ecosystem. You need a strong employer brand to attract the right people who have the option to choose right now.
And so kind of your third tip is utilizing technology. And so we've definitely talked about this with LinkedIn and Monster and all of these other different sites out there. And so obviously there's a ton of them, right? So how do we start to, as a business owner, differentiate between which site's going to be right for me? And I mean, so that way we're not spending 60 million hours trying to post all of our
Yeah, yeah,
information out there
yeah.
everywhere, right?
Yes, I mean 60 million hours. You got
Like,
some bigger
those
problems.
are some big numbers,
Yeah,
yeah.
big problems. But realistically, I mean, you summed it up great. Time is the biggest resource you have, or the smallest resource you have as a hiring manager. So you want to be most sensitive of it, and technology saves that. Same as you'd hire like an HRIS to do your payroll and manage your team members and so on. Principals work for recruiting and hiring. So I would say everything from picking a good job board, and that's really what you're looking for as an employees. If you tend to hire a lot of like corporate roles, so marketing folks, engineers, executives in sales, these different categories, I would say picking a job board that can target people for you, like a LinkedIn and Indeed. Glassdoor does it to a point. So really honing in and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to invest this extra $1,200, right? I don't know if that's the exact price, but that I would spend of my time. Instead, I'm going to have this technology find people for me. And then to a point, you can even use LinkedIn Recruiter. I mean, it's the tool that's like most valuable in my toolkit. When you're able to really build a search for a specific person and then target them, it kind of changes the dynamic of having somebody approach you. So that's huge. And then, the other part is, where are you storing your applicants? How are you doing this? So good ATS or an applicant tracking system makes your life super easy. You can say, oh, hey, I remember Jane Doe from 2 years ago. I interviewed her for this role. Let's see if she's still available, right? So having a database or somewhere where you're tracking all these people you're talking to saves you so much time in the long run, where you can come back and look at evaluations, how good they were. And that in turn helps make your hiring process super easy. If you have a marketing person who doesn't work out and you had two people in the process and you have all their information stored in an ATS, you just pull them back up and go from there.
Honestly, it amazes me, right? When just listening to you talk about it, it's exactly like a marketing or sales process
100%.
when you're looking at trying to get new hires, right? CRMs, right? Logging, that different information for your businesses. Same kind of thing, right? Making sure that, hey, do I have, the information, and have I kept up on that information of that business? And just like for that same kind of prospect of, are they, the right fit maybe for something that's down the road, rather than what I just had initially, and why maybe I didn't hire them out the get-go. So it's just amazing kind of that similarities that we see in the two. So
yeah, and I think the important thing to keep in mind is, I know people talk about like recruiting and talent acquisition, employment branding, and you're probably like, oh, like I don't know anything about that. I can't do it. But I mean, your point's spot on. It's marketing. Employment branding is marketing from a different angle. You're marketing to clients who you want to come work for you. So same lens. You're looking at technologies to make your life easier to attract clients or employees. Right? It's all the same thing. And so if you're able to kind of maintain that mentality, and in center of everything, make sure you're hiring for culture, so you find the right person, so you don't have to deal with turnover and so on, right? It makes your life super easy as a business owner or business leader.
I think changing just that mindset, just that simple of,
100%.
hey, we are hiring for our ideal, basically prospect, right? Of, this is my ideal employee, and going out and how would I find them and then attract them and keep them from there. All right, Nick. So to kind of wrap up today, went through a lot, right?
Yeah, a lot of information.
A lot of information. So, I mean, kind of tip number one, right? Solid interview process. Number two, strong employer branding, making sure that you kind of develop that culture online. People are able to find it and really be able to see that. And then utilizing technology, making sure that you're using the right sites to target the right employees for your business.
Yeah, and make your life easier at the end of the day. The technology piece is to make your life easier, make the interview process better.
Yeah. And so to kind of wrap up, I think the last thing is to change that mindset and really, dive into marketing and hiring are the exact same thing. Just one, you're looking for employees, and one, you're looking for customers.
Yeah.
So, again, I really appreciate you coming
Of course.
on and giving those great tips. Again, if you'd like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.